I still remember the exact moment I opened that email from HR. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, 8 months of living and breathing code, and finally, the project launched successfully, saving the company $2 million annually. The bonus notification sitting in my inbox read $45,000. I sat there in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house staring at that number, feeling like every sacrifice had been worth it. I had plans for that money, real plans. Pay down my $78,000 in student loans, start saving for a house, maybe finally move out, and stop being 28 years old, living with mom and dad. I did not know that my own father had already made plans for my money too. I did not know that 3 days later I would overhear him laughing in the living room, telling my mother exactly how they would spend my entire bonus on a luxury cruise without ever asking me. Before I tell you how my own father tried to steal my hard-earned money, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you have ever had family cross a line they should never have crossed. And subscribe because this story gets wild, trust me. You will want to hear how I turned the tables on them and walked away with every penny they thought was theirs. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this situation in the first place. I am a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Denver. Started there right out of college as a junior developer, worked my way up over 4 years to a senior position. The project that earned me this bonus was not some small fix. I designed an entire new system that streamlined our operations and cut costs by $2 million a year. For 8 straight months, I worked 70-hour weeks, skipped weekends, lived on coffee and takeout. When the system went live without a single major bug, my manager told me the company wanted to recognize my contribution. That recognition came in the form of a $45,000 performance bonus. Now you might be wondering why a 28-year-old senior software engineer was still living at home. The answer is simple and depressing: student loans. I graduated with $78,000 in debt hanging over my head like a storm cloud. My salary was decent, around $75,000 a year, but after taxes, rent, and Denver car payment insurance and minimum loan payments, I was barely saving anything. 2 years ago, my parents offered me a deal. Move back home, pay them $500 a month in rent, way below market rate, and use the savings to attack my debt. It seemed smart at the time. I could save $1,500 a month easily, throw it all at the loans, and be out in maybe 3 years. I had a clear plan. 1 more year at home, then I would move out, keep chipping away at the debt, save for a down payment on a small condo. Everything was on track. My relationship with my parents seemed fine back then. My dad, Frank, 58 years old, had retired from his job as a factory supervisor 3 years earlier. He had a decent pension, some savings, and spent his days playing golf and working on home improvement projects. My mom, Linda, 56, worked part-time at the local library, more for something to do than for the money. They were not rich, but they were comfortable. They owned their house outright, had no debt, and lived a simple life. Dad always talked about family loyalty, how family members look out for each other, how we stick together no matter what. I believed him. I thought we had a good thing going. The bonus letter arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in early October. I got home from work around 6:30, still buzzing from the adrenaline of closing out another successful sprint. There on the kitchen table sat a business envelope with my company's logo in the corner. I recognized it immediately: official correspondence from the HR department. My hands actually shook a little as I opened it. The letter was formal, congratulating me on my outstanding performance and contribution to the company's success. Then came the number that made my heart race. Performance bonus $45,000 before tax. Below that, they had calculated the estimated tax withholding around $13,500. Net amount to be deposited approximately $31,500. The check would be mailed to this address within 2 weeks. I sat down at the kitchen table and read that letter 3 times. $31,500 after tax. I could pay off more than a third of my student loans in one payment. Or I could use $25,000 to knock the loan balance down to $53,000 and put the rest in an emergency fund. Either way, this was life-changing money. This was the kind of windfall that could shave years off my debt repayment plan. I felt this wave of relief wash over me like finally, the universe was paying me back for all those nights I stayed until midnight, fixing code, all those weekends I skipped plans to meet deadlines. I was so happy I almost cried. I left the letter on the table and went to take a shower, my head full of calculations and possibilities. When I came back down 30 minutes later, my parents were sitting in the living room watching television. Neither of them said anything about the letter, but something felt off. The envelope had moved slightly. I was almost certain I had left it aligned with the edge of the table, and now it sat at an angle. I picked it up, looked at it, felt that tiny whisper of unease in my gut. Had they moved it? Had they opened it? I shook my head. No, I was being paranoid. It probably just got knocked when Mom set down her coffee cup or something. I took the letter up to my room and filed it in my desk drawer. That evening at dinner, Mom made pot roast, one of my favorite meals. I should have known something was up right then, because she only made pot roast for special occasions. We sat down to eat, and at first everything seemed normal. Then Dad started asking questions. Casual at first. So work has been good lately. Yeah, pretty good, I told him. Why do you ask? Just curious, he said. You seem happier these days. I shrugged. The project went well, that is all. He kept probing. Your company treats you well. Right, good benefits and everything. I found it weird because Dad had never shown much interest in the details of my job. He knew I worked with computers, that was about the extent of it. Yeah, it is decent, I said, trying to keep my answers vague. Then Mom chimed in. Your father and I have been thinking, she said, and then she paused. This long, uncomfortable silence stretched out, thinking about what I asked. Dad put down his fork and looked at me. You know we have been supporting you for 2 years now, he said. I felt my shoulders tense. I pay rent, Dad. $500 a month. He waved his hand dismissively. That barely covers utilities, son. The water bill alone goes up when you are home all day on weekends. I was not home all day. On weekends, I was at the office, but I did not correct him. What your father means, Mom said in that gentle voice she uses when she is about to ask for something, is that when good things happen to people in a family, the whole family should benefit, should share in the good fortune. My stomach dropped. They knew about the bonus. They had definitely opened that letter. I felt violated and angry, but I also felt this creeping sense of guilt. Were they right? Should I be contributing more? I was living in their house, eating meals they cooked, sometimes using their internet and utilities. But I was also paying rent, buying my own groceries half the time, cleaning up after myself. I was not some freeloader. Still, that old familiar feeling of owing them something settled over me like a heavy blanket. I mumbled something non-committal and finished my dinner as quickly as possible, then escaped to my room. Lying in bed that night, I could not shake the uncomfortable feeling from that conversation. My parents had never directly asked me for money before. Sure, Dad made comments here and there about how expensive everything was, how retirement was not as cheap as they had planned, but nothing like this. Nothing so pointed. I told myself I was overreacting. They were probably just stressed about their own finances. I would talk to them in a few days, maybe offer to increase my rent to $700 a month or something. I fell asleep, feeling unsettled, not knowing that downstairs at that exact moment, they were planning exactly how they would spend my money. 3 days later, on Saturday morning, I woke up early planning to hit the gym. I needed to burn off some of the stress that had been building all week. I headed downstairs quietly, planning to grab my water bottle from the kitchen and slip out before my parents woke up. But as I reached the bottom of the staircase, I heard voices coming from the living room. Mom and Dad were already awake and they were talking. I was about to call out a good morning when I heard my name. I froze on the stairs. So the letter said 45,000. Dad's voice said clearly. Even after tax, that is over $30,000. My blood turned to ice. I could not move, could not breathe. They were talking about my bonus. Are you sure we should? Mom asked, and there was hesitation in her voice. It is his money, Frank. My father laughed, actually laughed. He is living under our roof, Linda. We raised him. We put food in his mouth for 18 years. It is only fair we get a cut of his success. I gripped the stair railing so hard my knuckles went white. A cut of my success? I already talked to the travel agent, Dad continued. Mediterranean cruise, 3 weeks luxury suite. The whole package. Mom's voice got higher. How much, Frank? $38,000 for both of us, he said proudly. All inclusive. 5-star accommodations. But Frank, Mom protested weakly. That is more than his entire bonus after taxes. Dad's response made my stomach turn. He can afford it. He makes good money. Besides, we deserve this. We have worked our whole lives, sacrificed everything for him, and now it is our turn to enjoy life. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. The room spun. They had not just read my mail, they had made entire plans based on it. Plans that cost more than my bonus even provided. They expected me to fund their dream vacation without ever asking if I was okay with it. Without caring that I had $78,000 in debt crushing me. Without considering that this was my money earned through my work, my stress, my sacrificed weekends and social life. I forced myself to walk into the living room. My parents were sitting on the couch, and spread across the coffee table were glossy travel brochures, cruise ships, European destinations, luxury accommodations. When they saw me, they jumped like guilty children. Mom quickly tried to gather up the brochures. Morning, I said, and my voice came out colder than I intended. They both mumbled good morning back, avoiding my eyes. Did you open my mail? I asked directly. The question hung in the air. What mail? Dad asked, but his acting was terrible. The letter from my company, I said. The one about my bonus. A long silence followed. It was on the kitchen table, sweetheart, Mom finally said. I thought it might be a bill or something important. It had my name on it, I pointed out. It was sealed. Dad stood up, and I watched his expression shift from guilty to defensive. Since you brought it up, he said, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used when he wanted to shut down arguments. Your mother and I have been discussing this. We think it is time you contributed more to this household. More than $500 a month. I pay rent, I said. That is not enough, he shot back. We are taking you on a family vacation, a cruise, quality time together before your mother and I get too old to travel. You will cover the cost? It was not a question, not a request. It was an announcement. You cannot just decide to spend my money, I said, trying to keep my voice level. After everything we have done for you, Dad's voice rose. We gave you a place to live when you needed it most. We could have charged you market rate rent, $1,500, $2,000 a month, but we gave you a deal. Mom jumped in, her eyes getting teary. We are not asking for much, Dennis. Just this one trip. One family vacation to make memories. Just this one trip that costs more than my entire bonus, I said. More than I will even see after taxes. Do not be selfish, Dad snapped. Family takes care of each other. That is what you always taught me, remember. That family comes first. I tried to set a boundary. I am not paying for your vacation. That money is earmarked for my student loans. Dad actually smirked at me. Student loans can wait. They are not going anywhere. The interest just keeps adding up, you know. Neither is your cruise, I said. Watch your tone, Dad said, stepping closer. You are still living in my house. Then Mom started crying. Real tears streaming down her face. We just wanted to spend time with you before we get too old. She sobbed. Do you know how much we have sacrificed for you? Dennis' dad launched into a list. Every penny we spent raising you. The portion of your college we helped with. The cheap rent we have given you for 2 years. Every meal, every roof over your head, every advantage you have ever had, we gave you that. And this is how you repay us, by being stingy with one bonus check. That is when it clicked for me. I saw the pattern clearly for the first time. Every time my parents wanted something from me, they used guilt. They brought up everything they had ever done for me, made me feel like I owed them an unpayable debt. The cheap rent was not a favor, it was an investment in control. It kept me obligated, kept me feeling like I could never say no because I owed them so much. And then Dad delivered the final blow. The travel agent needs a deposit by Monday, he said calmly. I already told her yes. I already put down $2,000 from our savings. You will reimburse us for that and pay the balance when your bonus check arrives. You what? The words barely made it out of my mouth. I booked it, he said. The cruise is in 6 weeks. I figured you would come around once you had time to think about it, and I did not want to lose the good cabin. They had already booked it. Not only had they made plans with my money, they had committed to those plans. They had spent their own savings as a deposit, fully expecting me to cover it and more. They had violated my privacy, stolen my financial information, made major decisions without my consent, and now stood there acting like I was the bad guy for being upset about it. I walked out of that living room without another word. I went upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on my bed, shaking. Not from fear, from pure rage mixed with heartbreak. These were my parents. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, support my goals, celebrate my successes. Instead, they saw my success as their opportunity. They saw me not as their son, but as an ATM machine. And in that moment, staring at the walls of my childhood bedroom covered in posters from high school, I realized something that changed everything. I was not their son anymore. I was their resource, and it was time to close that account. I sat in my room for 30 minutes, forcing myself to think clearly. The anger was still there, hot and sharp, but underneath it, I felt something else, determination. I could not win this fight by yelling or arguing. My parents were experts at guilt and manipulation. They had years of practice. If I tried to reason with them, they would just wear me down with tears and accusations until I gave in. I needed to be smarter. I needed to act, not react. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. First question, can parents legally open their adult child's mail? The answer was clear, no. It is actually a federal crime to open mail addressed to someone else, even if they live in your house. But what was I going to do? Call the cops on my own parents? Take them to court? That was not a solution. That would just create more problems. I needed a different approach. Then it hit me. The bonus check was being mailed to this address to my parents' house. If it arrived here, they could intercept it. They had already proven they had no problem violating my privacy. What was to stop them from opening that check forging my signature, cashing it somehow. Or at minimum, holding it hostage until I agreed to their demands. I needed to make sure that check never arrived at this house. I called my company's HR department that Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I sat in my car in the parking lot at work phone in hand, heart pounding. "Hi, this is Dennis Rodriguez in the engineering department. I need to update my mailing address for the upcoming bonus check." "Sure, no problem," the HR representative said cheerfully. "What is the new address?" I hesitated. "I did not have a new address yet. Can I call you back in about an hour? I am just confirming the apartment number with my landlord." She said that was fine, but reminded me they needed it by end of business day. The checks were already being processed and would go out by Wednesday. I had exactly 9 hours to find a new place to live. I spent my lunch break looking at apartments. I drove to 3 different places, increasingly desperate. The first was too expensive, $1,800 a month for a 1-bedroom. The second was perfect, but would not be available for 2 weeks. The check would arrive before then. The third place was a small studio apartment in a slightly older building. The landlord was a woman in her 60s named Mrs. Patterson. She showed me the space, maybe 400 square feet total, but clean and well-maintained. $1,200 a month, she said. First month and security deposit up front. "When can I move in?" I asked. She looked at me carefully. "You seem in a hurry," she said. "Is everything all right, family situation?" I said honestly. "I need to get out quickly." She studied my face for a long moment, and I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. "I have seen this before," she said quietly. "You seem like a good kid in a bad spot. Tell you what, give me first month rent now. You can pay the security deposit on Friday." "Can I move in tomorrow?" I asked. She handed me the keys. "The place is yours." I called HR back at 2 p.m. and gave them my new address. The representative updated my file and confirmed the check would be mailed there within 7 days. I thanked her profusely and hung up, feeling the first glimmer of hope I had felt in days. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part, actually moving out without my parents knowing until it was done. For the next 3 days, I lived a double life. After work each day, I stopped at a store and bought moving boxes, packing tape markers. I kept everything in my car trunk. At night, after my parents went to bed around 10 p.m., I quietly packed my belongings. I worked by the light of my phone, moving carefully, keeping everything silent. Clothes went into suitcases and boxes. My laptop, external hard drives, work equipment, all carefully wrapped and packed. Important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, car title went into a folder that never left my sight. I took the photos from my childhood that featured me, but left behind anything that was just my parents. I took the guitar my grandfather had left me before he died. I took my sheets, my towels, my toiletries, anything I had bought with my own money. I left behind all the furniture, the childhood trophies and awards, the posters on the walls. Those things were tied to a version of me that no longer existed. By Wednesday night, everything I owned fit into 8 boxes and 2 large suitcases. I stacked them in my closet, hidden behind hanging clothes. My room looked normal from a quick glance, but it was ready. Thursday. I took a personal day from work, telling my manager I had a family emergency to deal with, which was not exactly a lie. My parents both had routines. Dad left for his golf game at 8:30 a.m. Mom went to the library for her shift at 9. By 9:15, the house was empty except for me. I loaded my car in 3 trips. Each time I carried boxes down those stairs, I felt like I was shedding weight. This house, I grew up in these rooms that held so many memories. They did not feel like home anymore. They felt like a cage I was finally escaping. I did not feel sad. I felt free. My last trip down, I carried the guitar and one final box. I stood in the doorway of my empty bedroom, stripped of everything that made it mine, and I did not feel any regret. I locked the door and left my house key on the kitchen table. I did not leave a note. They would figure it out. I drove to my new apartment and found Mrs. Patterson waiting to help me carry boxes upstairs. "You travel light," she observed. "That is good. Means you are not weighed down by things that do not matter." "Fresh start," I told her. "The best kind," she agreed. I spent the afternoon unpacking the essentials. Laptop set up on the small desk. Clothes hung in the closet. Bed made with my own sheets. The apartment was tiny, just a main room with a kitchenette, a small bathroom, and barely enough space for a bed and desk. But it was mine. Nobody could walk in without permission. Nobody could open my mail. Nobody could guilt me or manipulate me or make demands. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone rang at 6 p.m. "Dad," I answered. "Where the hell are you?" he shouted without preamble. "Where is all your stuff? Your room is empty." "I moved out," I said calmly. "What, you cannot just leave?" "I am 28 years old," I said. "Yes, I can." "What about the cruise?" His voice was nearly hysterical now. "What about your responsibility to this family, my responsibility?" I asked. "You mean funding your vacation with my bonus? That money should be shared," he insisted. "You opened my mail. You made plans without asking me. You guilt-tripped me and manipulated me. I do not owe you my bonus. I do not owe you anything beyond the respect you have lost. After everything we have done for you," he started, but I cut him off. "I paid rent. I bought my own food. I earned my own money through my own work, and Dad, I called HR on Monday. My bonus check is being mailed to my new address. Good luck booking that cruise." The silence on the other end was absolute. Then he started yelling words, tumbling over each other, accusations and guilt and anger all mixed together. I let him rant for about 10 seconds. Then I said, "Goodbye, Dad," and hung up. I blocked his number immediately. I sat in my empty studio apartment in the silence I had created and felt lighter than I had in years. The silence was deafening, but for the first time in my life, it was a silence I controlled. The first week in my new apartment was strange. Mom texted me I had not blocked her number yet. "Please come home," she wrote. "Let us talk about this like adults." "There is nothing to talk about," I replied. "I need space." "Your father is very upset," she texted back. "He should be upset with himself," I wrote. She did not respond after that. On day 12, the envelope arrived. I was sitting at my new desk when I heard the mail slot clank. I walked over, and there it was, business envelope from my company's payroll department. My hands shook as I opened it. The check inside was for $31,847.23. I stood there holding this piece of paper that represented 8 months of my life, and I felt vindicated. Not because of the money itself, but because I had protected it. I had protected my right to make my own choices. I deposited the check that same day. Then I paid $25,000 toward my student loans, watching my balance drop from $78,000 to $53,000 in one transaction. I put $5,000 into a savings account for emergencies. The remaining $1,847.23 went toward furniture for my apartment, a used couch from a thrift store, a small dining table, a lamp, some kitchen supplies. Everything second-hand but functional. Everything mine. 2 days later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I made the mistake of answering. "You stole that money from us," my father's voice said. I recognized it immediately, even though the number was different. He was calling from a friend's phone. "It was never yours," I said calmly. "It was my bonus from my work." "We had to cancel the cruise," he said, and I could hear the rage barely contained in his voice. "We lost the $2,000 deposit." "That is what happens when you make plans with money that is not yours," I said. Then I hung up and blocked that number too. The first month living alone felt surreal. I ate dinner by myself every night at my little thrift store table. No one asked where I had been. No one questioned my choices. No one made passive-aggressive comments about what I was eating or how I was spending my time. It was quiet sometimes, uncomfortably so, but that quiet meant peace. No drama. No manipulation. No walking on eggshells wondering what mood my parents would be in. Mrs. Patterson became an unexpected friend. She lived in the apartment below mine, and sometimes she would invite me down for dinner. She was a widow living alone for 15 years since her husband passed. Over pot roast one evening, ironic considering that was the last meal I had eaten at my parents' house, she told me her story. She had left her first husband when she was 40 years old. He was not physically abusive, she said, but he controlled everything. Her money, her friends, her choices. Everyone told her she was crazy to leave a marriage after 20 years. Everyone said she should be grateful for what she had. But I chose myself, she said, looking at me with knowing eyes. Best decision I ever made. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you are the ones who hurt you most. And the bravest thing you can do is walk away. At work, my colleague Jake noticed I seemed different. Lighter somehow. Over lunch one day, I told him a condensed version of what happened. Jake listened without interrupting, then shook his head. "Man, you did the right thing. Family does not mean unlimited access to your bank account. Boundaries are healthy even with parents. Especially with parents sometimes." Hearing that validation from someone outside the situation helped more than I expected. 2 months after moving out, I started therapy. I found a counselor who specialized in family dynamics and boundaries. In our first session, I explained what happened. She listened carefully, then said something that hit me hard. "What you are describing is financial abuse. Your parents conditioned you to believe you owed them compensation for raising you. But parenthood is not a loan. It is not an investment with expected returns. You do not owe your parents your adult earnings just because they fed you as a child." Over the following months, we unpacked years of manipulation I had not even recognized. The guilt trips. The way they framed every favor as something I would need to repay. The way they made me feel selfish for having boundaries. It was painful work, but necessary. 6 months after I moved out, I had no regrets. My student loan balance was down to $28,000. I was making aggressive payments now that I was not being emotionally drained. My tiny apartment felt like a palace because it was peaceful. I slept better than I had in years. No anxiety about what demands would be made of me the next day. No walking on eggshells. No one treating my accomplishments as their windfall. I learned that family does not give you a free pass to violate boundaries. I learned that love does not mean sacrificing your entire self on the altar of someone else's wants. I learned that saying no is not selfish, it is self-preservation. I learned that you can love someone and still need to protect yourself from them. Those are hard lessons, but they are worth learning. The painful truth was that my parents never apologized. 8 months after I moved out, my mother sent an email. "Can we talk?" she asked. I agreed to meet her for coffee. We sat across from each other at a Starbucks, and she said, "I understand why you left." It was not a full apology. She did not say they were wrong. She did not acknowledge the violation or the manipulation. but it was something. It was a crack in the wall. My father, she told me, refused to see me. He was still angry, still felt I had stolen from him. That is fine, I said. I meant it. I did not need his forgiveness. I needed my own peace. My relationship with my mother now is cordial but distant. We text occasionally. We meet for coffee every few months. There are boundaries in place that did not exist before. She knows not to ask about my finances. She knows not to make demands. It is not the close mother-son relationship some people have, but it is healthier than the toxic closeness we had before. Sometimes distance is the kindest thing you can give someone. That $45,000 bonus did more than reduce my debt. It showed me I could stand up for myself. It taught me that my worth is not tied to other people's approval. It proved that I was strong enough to choose my own well-being over family expectations. Money comes and goes. You earn it, you spend it, you earn more. But self-respect, once you lose that, it is incredibly hard to get back. And I was not willing to sell mine, not even to the people who raised me. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can buy is not a house or a car, it is your freedom. And sometimes the best investment you can make is in the courage to walk away from people who see you as a resource instead of a person. My $45,000 bonus did not just lighten my debt load. It taught me that I was never the selfish one for wanting to keep what I earned. They were selfish for believing they deserved it. And that is a lesson worth every single penny. So let me ask you, have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who thought your success was their payday? Drop your story in the comments below, because I know I am not alone in this. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when the people closest to you cross the line. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to choose yourself even when it is hard. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives you the courage to protect your own peace, whatever that looks like for you. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, family is important, but so are you.